results in the single digital gateway portal out of the repository of links and all the information that will be collected and harvested through your national websites and portals. So today, for the sake of efficiency, we will jump already quickly into the GitHub remaining issues in order to tackle them. We have a lot, actually. We have like 8 or 9 issues. And then we will discuss at length with you the next steps and mainly the piloting phase. So with any further ado, I give the floor to you, Florian, and let's dive into the GitHub issues.
Good. Yeah, indeed.
In the meantime, any question, any consultation, please raise your hand. I don't think. Yes, here we can raise the hand. Yes, there is this functionality, and you can always intervene in case something is not clear or you want to add another point of discussion. So thanks a lot.
Indeed. Thanks, Miguel, for the intro. And with that, let's move forward.
This is okay. So I will be discussing the issues, Miguel. So what we've shared with you in the previous week, in the week before, is the updated model based on the webinar we had a few weeks ago, where we have taken into account your input and also we have noted them down on GitHub. And from there, we've come with an updated model with a few changes. You can always find the model, which is now also published on GitHub on HTML specification, listing all the different classes and properties in a clear overview. So if you haven't checked that out yet, you should definitely do. Okay. So what we'll do today is go over the remaining issues and try to solve them as much as possible. And if not, we can part them and investigate them further on our side. So that will be the 2 options for today. So first of all, within the updated model, we have both information, such as you can see here on this slide, coming from the metadata for URLs, so the data you're already providing to the repository of links, so you don't have to do anything for this. And we have additional information that will be tested during this phase. So additional information you will need to provide. So in this image, you can clearly see, for example, policy code that's already in the metadata for URLs. So you don't need to do anything for this. And the idea is then to extend this metadata, of course. So jumping into the different updates we have done so far from the previous webinar until today, and that are also published on GitHub. You can see here 10 changes we have made. I will not run through them all. You can find them all on GitHub also. But just to give you a few examples, for example, we have added the policy code under public service, as you can see here. Furthermore, we have added the geographic name to location, which is one that can automatically be retrieved from the nuts and allow location. So again, there's no additional input required. It's from the same code lists. In addition, we have also, you can see here, issue 10, update 10, is we have updated the type of output, for example, to the different types of output mentioned in Annex 2. So the slides will also be shared later after the webinar, so feel free to have a look in detail to the different changes we have already made and if you have any comments on these. But what we will do today is dive further into a few comments that we want to clear out and discuss them in more detail. It will be around 6-7 issues we have still left that we will discuss now in more detail. So jumping into the first one, as you know, we have location, which is defined by nuts and allow, and this is in alignment with the metadata. So here we have both the geographic identifier, so the code and the name which you can automatically derive. And then here is the question is to the member states, do we need on top of this one an additional name that you can define yourself? So a free text field where you can choose a name. Do you see the advantage in this or not for the usage of both the end user and the ones implementing the metadata for the different web pages? So feel free to comment. You can also in the chat, in case you are, in case you think this is useful, do a +1 in the chat, and otherwise you can put a -1. And of course, feel free to raise hands or directly comment. Okay, I see Ana Rosa is in favor of this one.
Of course, just to make it clear, as Maxim mentioned, at the moment we have already a geographic name, but which is the name given by nuts in the code list. So if there is a need indeed to provide an additional name, an additional label from your side that is different from nuts, then we think that this additional property would be useful. And I think, yeah, that's exactly the proposition we are making now. Okay, Kat commented as well. Other inputs, or please raise hand if anything is unclear regarding this one. And if this is something we add, should we make it optional or mandatory? I guess optional. Yeah, I understand that, Valentini. Yeah. Okay, but so the proposition then would be to make it optional, and countries or public administrations that do need it can use it because it will be there. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Good.
But with no further ado, let's continue to the next issue then. So the next issue that we want to clear out is the one on output. So as you know, we have included in the model a class output with then different types. At the moment, we are aligned with the types defined in Annex 2 of the SDGR. But here we are asking the question, is there a need to have a classification which is more generic than the one in SDGR? Because as you can see here on the image, proof of an example of bird output is proof of registration of bird or birth certificate. What we see in CPS VAP is that we have more generic output types, such as a declaration, a recognition, a permit. So our approach here would be that indeed we include some more generic types that could improve the searchability and findability within the search engine and within YourEurope. Here in the next slide, I can also show you an overview of the different output types in Annex 2 defined, where you can indeed see very specific outputs, and then the idea would be, if there is a need, to create more generic output types that can improve the search and the findability in combination also with other metadata within your search engine. Are there any comments on this issue? Yes, go ahead, Ana Rosa.
Oh, well, the first thing is that information on procedures are not only related to Annex 2, but also Annex 1. So as we need to consider both types of classifications. In SDG, the metadata has codes for both annexes. And yes, I agree that we need a more generic classification of procedures, because I mean, even if we are talking of a specific topic, there are different procedures for, as you put here, so for declaration, for cancellation, for things like that. But of course, I would like to see the concrete proposal for the generic classification.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And I think you're right, Ana Rosa. That's indeed the reason why the current classification proposed in the model, the one based on Annex 2, we also perceive it as very specific. And in terms of added value, it's not really a type of output. It's more detailed than that, because it's already very specific to each procedure of Annex 2. And it doesn't cover the information on procedures from Annex 1. And so I think we need to work towards a classification for the output types that is covering both. And what we display here based on CPSUEP is just a starting point to see, okay, is this the type of classifications we would like to start developing with the level of genericity that we are looking for, or not? And from there, we will indeed work further towards looking at the procedures under the two annexes and checking whether we have generic terms within the classification that can cover it.
Yeah, but in any case, for instance, you say that you have analyzed the outputs from Annex 2, but from what I learned of the procedures that our competent authorities have included already in the SDG repository of links, Annex 2 is the procedure number 16 is quite extensive. So the output, for instance, for managing licenses and permits for business activities is not only about confirmation of registrations. Also, the cancellation of the registration. Also, the modification of any part of the registration, and so on. So, I mean, even Annex 2 is not complete if you stick only for the name of, or for the text that is put in the output column of Annex 2, because it is very generic for the reality of the diversity of procedures that can fit in at least in this number 16 procedure.
Yeah. Valentini, you want to add something?
Actually, it's more of a question. It's not clear to me, but maybe it's because I'm not so familiar with Annex 2, like we haven't really started working on that. For the scope of this project, okay. I mean, I understand all the arguments Ana Rosa has just explained to us, but for the purpose of this project, to support findability, okay, in the YourEurope search, is there actually added value to deep into a more detail and not stay to this generic, let's say, classification of output? I mean, I could see all this need that Ana Rosa just described in a national registry of procedures search, for example. Do you guys think the ones that have already started working on Annex 2 have already feedback from their authorities, blah, 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 that, yeah, we should, go to a more detailed output classification?
In reality, Valentini, now that you mentioned that, for the searchability, I think that it's not so relevant the output, but the purpose of the procedure. So the purpose of the procedure sometimes is just mentioned in the title of the procedure. So what I'm trying to put on the table is that what I learned, because I'm not an expert on procedures, but now our competent authorities have several thousands of procedures already registered in SDG. And I see that there are a quite variety of purposes for the same topic. So it is not so much about the output, but the purpose of the procedure. When I say cancellation, for instance, I've been working with some examples about cancellation of things, several things related with businesses. So it is not the same if I am looking for being registered than if I want to cancel the registration, or if I want to modify something, or if I want to get a certificate of that registration. So indeed, there is a generic category, but from my point of view, the Annex 2 number 16 is too generic. So that's why I try to mention this particular procedure, because it is so wide a scope of this category that I think the searchability of the procedures in that category is poor. And also Annex 1 is more related to domains. So we are talking about domains, so it is good for searchability. But in the case of the Annex 2, I insist at this particular, at least this particular procedure, the number 16. But also, for instance, if you think on the tax declaration for people or for businesses, there are several procedures related to that fact. So the typical, the usual is present the declaration, but you also have other procedures related to the declaration. So that's why I said that I think that it's good to start from these categories, but in Annex 2. But for searchability, when you, of course, if you have only 2 procedures under one category, for searchability is enough. But I see that in the case of number 16, you can find hundreds of procedures, because they are related of any activity, business activity. So you have a lot of them. That's why I think that we need more than only the categories defined by the annexes. But I don't have the solutions. I'm just putting the problem on the table.
Yeah, and I think, Ana Rosa, sorry, I got disconnected for a minute. The important question to all the participants here is, is it useful from a searchability point of view for the users to have and the search engine to have the types of outputs?
I think we should put ourselves in the place of the user searching, right?
Indeed.
And we should always have this in mind. Otherwise, we'll get lost, guys, I think, asking too much in the metadata from the member states. Anyway, an optional, and to have this optional is not the answer to our problem, you know? We don't want to end up with a lot of optional fields so that we tackle the cases that some they need, some member states they need this field, others they don't, others have it, others they don't have. So I don't know, do you think that an extensive list of output types, really the user will actually type in the search the actual name of a type of output to, or if we display this meta, as we said, we do underneath every link as information extra for him to help locate the related link. Do you think really it will be the case?
I think, Valentini,
the common case, I mean, okay.
Yeah. The two cases you mentioned, so the one where a user in the search bar types one type of output, for example, certificate or declaration, plus extra keywords, is one use case.
Yeah, in combination with other keywords, of course, yeah.
Exactly. And the second use case is, as you mentioned as well, where as a result, we display the kind of output the user can expect out of the link provided. So if you click on this, this is related to this type of procedure and output. And our question is exactly what you mentioned. Do we really want to go into that because it's really useful, or we think that, yeah, compared to the investment requested to the member states, to the public administrations for describing this and filling in this metadata, the effort is not worth it because it's not that useful for the end users? I think that's the important question that we should answer now.
Yeah, I agree.
So, anyone?
Let's answer it, yeah, but
worst case, in the worst case, what we can do is, of course, the plan is to conduct some pilots to test the model developed so far. And based on that, we can also assess, okay, what were the results? Did it impact positively the experience and findability, searchability of the services? And based on that, decides on the next steps. But of course, this is postponing a bit this discussion right now to a couple of months.
Also, the piloting phase may bring clarity on how feasible is to, let's say, implement some of these properties or control vocabularies, for instance, here in the output or not, and what is the added value in order to wrap up and to make a final decision, no?
Indeed, I think so.
In the piloting phase, Florian, maybe we can also, when we will be discussing it later on, what kind of testing things, where we need to put the focus also on the testing phase to do the final adjustment based on a real life situation, you know.
Yeah, indeed. So if everyone agrees, the proposition for now is we put this on hold and we come back to it based on the results of the pilot.
Yes, you can put a -1 if you disagree, let's say. And then if I understand correctly, Florian, at the moment we keep then the type of outputs of Annex 2, or?
We can keep it as a placeholder and see
Yeah.
if, as part of the pilot, if we are really going to use it with the different public administrations involved.
Okay.
No worries, Anouza. Let's move forward.
Yeah. So the next issue is on the classification of the public service itself within the metadata of URLs. Of course, you know, we have already the classification of policy code, so the different policies within Annex 1 and Annex 2 that we have included. And then on top of that, we have added an event, which is about the live event that you can find in Annex 2, the different live events that we have also put there as a placeholder, and we start from the Annex 2. And we have already discussed this in the previous webinars, but we want to tackle it again with the following question, like, is this enough, this classification of the Annex 1 and 2? Is it the right level of usability and granularity, or should we analyze it further to come up with additional classifications that can help within the YourEurope portal, both the search and also the results and the findability? And to give, yeah, go ahead, Florian, if you want to add something.
No, please go.
Okay. To give you some examples of analysis we could do is here you see, for example, on the right, the live events from Annex 2, and on the left you see the live events of CPS VAP, which are a bit more detailed. So we could, in case what we have now with the SDGR is not completely what we are looking for, not the right level of granularity, we could find an additional classification on top. The same for the business events in Annex 2. So in Annex 2 you have one business event and then 6 different classifications, while in CPS VAP we have identified a bit more classifications. So depending on the needs, we can also try to structure this in a different way if it's preferred and needed. So going back to the issue, are there any comments on this issue, and how do you think we should move forward? You can always raise hands. I see Vincenzo mentioned something in the chat.
Yeah, Vincenzo, I don't know if you want to explain your point. Otherwise, Valentini, you raised the hand, so please go ahead.
Yes, hearing about classification, I get one more actually. We have CPSV categorization, classification, taxonomy, whatever. We have the annex, the SDGR policy codes, and there is also a different categorization. I don't know which word to use anymore. From the actual YourEurope portal, guys. I mean, because we had yesterday this the coordination meeting for Annex 1, and there has been a lot of discussion about mapping of the categories we see now as a user, as a visitor in the YourEurope portal, and how do they match with the metadata in our links notified in the repository that actually, mark the policy code. So, I don't know. How many classifications do we have to deal with? all these have somehow to, I mean, the user visits the YourEurope portal, right? And he can either go to the search, where the metadata there do the matching to get the results. And the categories in that YourEurope has is another thing. So we already have one mapping there. I don't know if you see my point or I confuse you more.
No, just to get to know much better this other classification of YourEurope portal, because unfortunately we couldn't participate yesterday. Does it go beyond purely the SDG regulation? Can you please explain a bit more what is the nature of this Euro? Is the old classification they used to have? Or?
Actually, I think they've changed it because there are new areas to cover. That's for sure. I know for sure. But I'm talking about something really simple. If we now open a browser and we go to the YourEurope portal, one option is to use the search box, right? And the other one is to navigate through their taxonomy, their categories.
I put the link, Valentini, in the chat.
Yeah.
Maybe just to make sure, is this the one you are talking about?
Yeah. So there is a navigation tree there. There is also the policy codes, okay, that are in our metadata. And we already asked for a mapping between these two, you know.
Indeed.
For example, it's not that I will go to the YourEurope portal and I will find the exact description as a category there, as I have the policy code description, you know what I mean? So we already need the mapping there, as the member states, in order to know where our content is to be found in YourEurope.
Yeah.
Wouldn't be that the case also for the visitor? Aren't we confusing him or not? What do you think?
So I think the important message, the first important message is, you're right, we should avoid creating multiple classifications that are representing the same thing or targeting the same thing.
Targeting the same thing, actually,
exactly.
Yeah.
And so here, the idea is, through this exercise, what we are discussing, this could be used first through the pilot, but if it's successful, we could also, with YourEurope team, update the filters on YourEurope. And so I think we should see those exercises as one. It's just to make sure that we create one list of business and life events, for example, that can be used on YourEurope, but also towards which the member states can easily map their own their own events. Is this making things clearer?
Yes, but okay, to this issue specifically, how we... Yeah, sorry?
No, Valentini, I don't know if it helps. Obviously, we may need to check again this with Alex, from the colleague from Grow. What we discussed with Ethel and Alex 2 weeks ago, basically the reference is Annex 2, Annex 1 and Annex 2 for this classification. They didn't mention this other taxonomy. I don't know what is the state of this mapping, but for this, purely for this exercise, what we can start off is by working on this taxonomy based on Annex 1 and Annex 2 of the regulation. Is our Bible. The reference is the regulation.
And Miguel, I think this is correct. We should start from the legal background we have, making sure that if we add extra layers to capture more detailed information or to propose new terms, we should make sure that we can always map back to the regulation. That's one point. And then I think on our side, it's we need simply to coordinate with YourEurope team to make sure that what we propose is one exercise per classification, and to avoid having parallel discussions about the same targets.
That's my understanding, Valentini. We need to go back to Alex to bring clarity on this, but my understanding is whatever is implemented in your Europe portal is an internal taxonomy. They will have to do the mapping, but from a member state side, the obligation for you, for member states, is just purely to work on the Annex 1 and Annex 2 of the regulation. This is the piece of legislation that is legally binding for you. Another thing is the internal categorization that your Europe portal is using, and now they will have to do the mapping to adapt it to these legal obligations from the regulation. But honestly, this is my first reaction. Maybe I'm wrong, and this is something to be clarified with Alex. But the other day, with Ethel and Alex, basically, we discussed this topic. If you remember, also Florian, and basically, Ethel was very, very clear, and it makes sense.
Yeah, just in order to avoid any misunderstanding, I never said that we should. We were asked now to include any metadata more than the policy codes derived from the annex. This internal categorization, as you said, Miguel, well, it's more than internal. I mean, it's there in the portal. I mean, it's the tree the users use to navigate. That's what I said. The target is the same as Florian clearly said. Okay, it says that I think we used 3 different, how can I say, references, let's say, to target the same thing. That's what I said. It was never asked, of course, to include any metadata. I mean, there's no change for us in our implementation concerning the links notification in the repository. But we are already confused. I mean, now if I want to go to the YourEurope portal and find my pages, national pages, it's not clear under which category to find them, because it's not one-to-one to the policy codes, you know, like from reading, yeah. So, okay, let's go on. I mean, maybe we talked about it too much.
We will have to do this homework. So maybe at this stage, we remain with this classification, but we need to discuss this to bring clarity and to see indeed how we align this with this other, not to confuse the citizens. So it requires further investigation from our side, and then we will come back to you with a proposal, okay?
Because if you think from visitors' perspective, okay, I go to YourEurope portal. Okay, I use the search, and after our pilot, I can see some extra tags under every link. But these tags are not the same with the menu I see if I didn't use the search, and I try to navigate to the national. I don't know. It may be confusing, maybe not.
Yeah. But we need also to find out from Grow what are the future plans, because my understanding was that at some point all this kind of landing page would be discontinued with all these kind of categories ending your portal in a purely Google search engine. But if they want to keep, they are going to keep, for historical reasons, this kind of entry points with these classifications and categories. Indeed, is relevant for this.
Yes, that was clear, Miguel. They're gonna keep it, and they're gonna add the content that is missing with the new country boxes to the new areas, policy areas that were not before in YourEurope there.
Where I think there is a bit of work is to make sure that the list proposed on YourEurope can be easily also mapped to the lists member states are using. Because as you mentioned, Valentini, from a user perspective, it's also important that at a certain point, the information retrieved by a user through those filters, through those lists, matches the expectations and the understanding of the administrations behind owning those information. Because otherwise, it will be really confusing also from a usability perspective.
Yeah, we will come back on this topic to you in coming days offline. I don't know if Vincenzo finally managed to sort it out the issues with the microphone because he was also.
But
I think you said it's a hardware problem.
in any case, we can
Okay.
discuss his comment, I guess.
Yeah.
So his comment was about Annex 1 and Annex 2, that certain information and then procedure are talking about the same thing, such as transferring a vehicle abroad. But then that there should be any correlation between the two lists.
Yeah, there are, as Ana Rosa mentioned earlier, they are looking from a different perspective at things.
Yeah.
One is more domain perspective, the information areas, while the other is more the live events. But of course, there is a correlation between both. You can interconnect them. The question is, do we capture all procedures for both with the two aspects? I think that's what is important. Yeah.
Yeah, which is something that could be captured by a more high-level classification, for example.
And Vincenzo, as from the moment you have several categories, and I think it's already the case on YourEurope, you start creating different facets for the navigation, right? At least that's my perception. Yeah, okay. Well, let's move forward, and if there's a need to discuss that further, we can also do it.
Okay. So the following issue is the one we also discussed in the previous webinar, and we want to discuss it again, is the amount of web pages that should be annotated as part of the SDG for, let's say, a single oh no, sorry, that will be the following issue. This issue is on the classification of the web pages. So currently we have a web page which is either an information or a procedure, which can both be Annex 1 or Annex 2. So the question is here, because in the previous webinar we have also received a comment of a more specific one, application. So is there a need to have this an additional classification on top of the two presented here, or is this sufficient for now? And please raise hands or comment in the chat. Okay. I see you're muted, Florian.
Oh, yeah, indeed, thanks. If you put +1, it means that you agree with the proposition, right? To keep it as it is, and as it is defined today in the repository of links. Yeah. Okay. Good. Then let's move forward.
Yeah. Okay. So the following issue is the one that I mentioned before. It's about the amount of web pages that we should have at European level for a specific public service. So this is one we also mentioned in the previous webinar. So we can either have, let's say, 20 web pages, detailed web pages about a public service, for example, registering a car, or we can only have one web page, so the most general one. And after that, the navigation within the different pages should happen only at national level and not at European level. So this depends on the amount of granularity that you want to have at the European level. There are both pros and cons about only giving one page or multiple ones. For example, if you provide multiple ones with sufficient annotation, this could also improve the information provided. But so to conclude, at the moment, we have kept it open, so we can do either one or multiple ones, and then it's up to the member states to to define the amount of pages they want to have at European level. So I don't know if there are any comments on this, but yeah, I think.
Or do you agree with the recommendation?
Let's see at the issue at the comment of Vincenzo. In relation to the pointing of the page, do we also provide for the indication of a national hub to manage the mapping between Annex 2 procedure and the specific national use case?
I think that's exactly the decision you need to make at national level, Vincenzo. And that's why we keep it open, and that's why we define the class public service with inside of it the property policy code, the type code, that enables you to decide, okay, this specific service is related to this procedure from Annex 2 or this information area from Annex 1. And that's how you do the mapping. But it's up to you to decide at which level of granularity you define those and how you link those public services described to the web pages or to one or several web pages. So this is definitely related to the discussion we had a couple of weeks ago, where I remember Valentini also saying that for Greece it's very important. Valentini, correct me if I'm saying stupid things. Huh? That for Greece it's important to redirect the user to one link where it will have information that he or she must read before actually starting the procedure itself.
Yeah, I mean, that's why we went along with the centralized implementation of a Greek SDG portal for information pages, of course, that is. But for some procedures, yes, we're also going to have an info page as well in our central portal. And other member states as well have gone with this centralized solution.
Indeed.
But you know what? Right now, because I recently faced this problem, it's through the dashboard, let's say, which is our interface, our back office, let's say, interface for the SDG. It's not clear that public service is one entity and links of the public service is another thing. For example, I assign service providers to links actually, not services right now. So I don't know if now if this comment is relevant or not. I mean, I'm a bit confused with concepts. Not conceptually actually, but implementation wise. What we notify is the links, and the links have metadata. When I'm importing through an API, through the Excel, or with the crawler, we have different ways to notify our links. Okay, I send links. For example, for the member states that have gone with the centralized implementation, when I notify the links, they're all under the same root URL, okay, of the portal. Yeah. But this portal includes, let's say, links for several different public services. And right now, it's not that I have a public service, let's say, issuing driving license as a different concept in the dashboard, in this tool we have, okay, to manage our links and associate this with links.
Yeah. So you mean you have only
for example, if I have to right now, I assign all my service providers to the same one link, actually, the web folder of the centralized portal, and that's it comes now to be a problem in the dashboard implementation. And what actually now we don't talk about the dashboard, okay, but it's the logic behind it, even if it's a database, a model, or I don't know if it's clear to you guys, but for me it was a bit mixing. Also, now that I start inviting, registering the SPs to the SDG dashboard, and they're all assigned to the central portal and not to their service.
And does it mean that yeah, you point to one domain, one web folder, as you mentioned?
Yeah.
Does it mean that when in the search results the links displayed are always the same? It is always the same?
No. The
No,
search will, yeah, no.
Under the folder, the right.
Yeah,
right
the search will work, of course will work, because it returns it looks in the repository and matches with the metadata. So yeah.
Yeah.
So sorry if I confused. Okay.
No, that's fine. But I think and your exact question, I think, is what should we do about public service, correct? Do we need to start describing it in combination with the links of the web
Something
pages?
like that, yeah, because you say it's a member state level decision, but okay, implementation wise, it's not clear through the tool that I have, to notify the national content. That's what I meant.
Yeah, but I think, Valentini, what is important as well is you still tag the different HTML pages at national level.
What do you mean tag? Like, yeah, the metadata are in the links, the actual information pages, if that's what you mean. I'm not sure I understood correct.
But meaning that in your HTML pages,
Okay.
you have some metadata tags on
Yeah,
top
yeah,
of
yeah.
the HTML. Voilà.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
in terms of implementation, that works because you have one domain, but you still need to provide the metadata tags at national level. And this is, in terms of implementation, what we will be talking about as part of the pilot with the public service and web page.
Okay. Let's just say then that it's not an interface for that, for us, to distinguish service and assign to links.
Indeed.
And
yeah,
okay,
or at
that's
least not
okay.
for the repository of links.
Yeah,
but there are different ways of implementing it, that's for sure. And that's what we need to, depending on the member states, we might favor one approach compared to another. And that's what we will be discussing in the pilot phase and right after. Okay, other comments, or do we move forward?
I think we can move forward. So as you will have seen in the model, is that we have different identifiers next to for the classes we have defined, such as public organization, public service, output. Those are identifiers that we have put there for you to be able to do internal identification. So as you see in the example there, the RDF example, of course, your public organization will be uniquely defined in case of RDF by a URI that you have to put. But then in addition, you can also have, I imagine, internal identifiers at national level, which then serve for national identification. And that's why we have proposed them to put them there for you to use. Is this something fine for you, or do you say, okay, we don't actually need them, we're fine with only the RDF, so the RDF identification of the class itself then, which will also be there, of course. And the example we have put here is some kind of best practice that we also use, where you then have the internal identification of the service, and then for the RDF format, you can simply put it behind your domain or whatever. But yeah, I think we've put it there to make sure that we can cover all cases, and also internally you can use proper identification. Because and also to add, at European level, of course, the clarification, the classification will happen by the different agreed classification types we have further, right?
I see Vincenzo responded in the chat that for him it could be useful at national level indeed. Other reactions? Thanks, Vincenzo.
And maybe also to add, for example, for location, we don't have this, because you of course have the geographic identifier. The same for language, and for the web page as identifier, you can then just use the URL. Okay, but I think then that this is clear for all attendees.
There is a question from Valentini. Is it optional or mandatory? For now, it depends on. Yeah, in most cases, it's mandatory. Yeah.
We have put it as mandatory, yes.
But of course, like it's more, if you, let's give an example. Huh? If you use the class output, which is optional, you don't have to always determine some outputs, then you need to have an identifier.
See also a comment from Davide. Web pages URL may vary. Would be useful to have an identifier also for them.
And by may vary, you mean in time? They are not persistent, or?
Yes, may vary in time.
Yeah, it's a valid point. And then, yeah, we would need a persistent identifier, yeah, on top.
Yeah, but in that case, the identifier for the web page should then just be a persistent URI instead of the URL I mentioned.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for clarifying that idea.
So we will add an identifier. So we will adapt then the identifier in web pages to make it, yeah, to keep the current one, but to add maybe for the link itself, the URL, to add a new one.
Yes, currently in the link repository, every link is identified by a UUID code, but is not visible to the user. Maybe
Indeed.
this can be a valid identifier.
Yeah, it's a valid point. So we will align with that. Yeah. Okay, good. Then let's move to the next part.
Yeah, so this was it for the different issues that we've discussed. So as you have seen, we have put a few on hold, but of course we will. So now, based on the input we've gathered, we will publish the stable version again on GitHub, which we will use for the pilot. And yeah, during the pilot, we can of course gather input, but the version that we will publish now can then be used as let's say, the starting point. That will not be changed immediately. So jumping to the pilot, what we want to do here within the pilot is to have some as you know, the exercise where we try to test the model within the YourEurope portal with the goal to improve the search and findability. And therefore, to make it clear for everyone and also for us, is that we've listed some objectives. Okay, welcome back, Anna Rosa. We're in the part of the pilot now. So for the pilot, we have listed some objectives that we certainly want to achieve or question, let's say, in this case. And feel free to comment if you see some things you doubt about. So the objectives here is to find out, okay, can you easily provide the additional data that we are asking? And here we can also, of course, help, but you will need to identify whether it's possible or not. For example, all the public organizations that are related to the public service. The second objective is about checking whether the search results can be improved according to additional tagging or indicating more public services than we have currently have. On the other side, we have next to the searching, also the usability, how this can be improved by showing additional data in the search results or additional filters. So at the moment, as we've discussed, we have also filters on different topics in the YourEurope portal. Perhaps by adding metadata and adding filters, people can find their results even faster. And then the last one is how can we automate the provision of the data even more? So there are currently different options to provide the data to the YourEurope portal. One of the objectives of the pilot is that we also try to assist in alternative ways than you are currently doing, based on also on the time that we can use for this one. So before jumping into the different steps of the pilot that we've prepared, let's first give some small examples about structured data, what we are doing here, how this can help search engines and also the filters, how this can help in finding your results better, etc., and how the structured data is related to the search. Here it's good that we give some practical examples that you can also see how it works. So the first example we've took from Google, where you can see on the left the search appearance and on the right the structured data, and on the left you see a recipe, apple pie by grandma, also with a rating, and you see it's in a specific kind of format with different recipes next to it and different movies. And how this actually looks on the web page itself is that the title is annotated, also the rating. So here you see in red the title, and then in blue the rating. And by annotating correctly, and this is how the search engine picks it up, you can make sure that the search engine provides this information in this kind of structured way. And this is also something, perhaps not in this kind of format, but in general, we want to achieve is by annotating sufficiently, we want to make sure that the results appear as good as possible within the results. A second example we show here is the YourEurope portal, where you have different filters such as live and travel, doing business, and here you also have some drop-down menus where you can choose the language or go for national EU content. In this case, I've searched for school in another country. So adding structured data and tagging can allow you to add more filters to your search and speed up the search. So this is also something we can take into account when defining the metadata further for the model.
And I think that's before we move forward, Maxime. That's exactly what we discussed also with the point of Valentini a bit earlier. The need to align on, okay, what kind of categories do we want at YourEurope site, and how to align those with what the member states are offering in terms of filters. And so I think there is some harmonization needed over there. And this pilot can be a starting point for the harmonization. And I don't know if there are questions on the previous one on the Google example. Why did we choose Google? Simply because this is also what is used today on YourEurope site. It's a service offered by Google that is making the search and crawling the different links provided in the repository of links. And based on that, proposing some results. And it's not coming from us. It's coming directly from the search engine itself. By improving the structure of your information, you can also improve the quality of the results. That's exactly what Maxime said, and I think that's also an important side that we want to test throughout the pilot. Any reactions on this or questions? Yeah, then we can move forward.
Yeah. So here you see the 4 steps that we have identified on the proposed approach. So let's go over them. The first one in the approach is actually mapping the additional metadata that we are asking for the model to the model that we have created now. So making sure that the data we are asking, that you can provide it, and of course we can assist in this process to see if the definitions match, etc. The second step is preparing the information in a collectible format. So this step is something that continues on the work that you've already done for the repository of links. So there is not much you need to do in addition. The third step is the collection of information at European level, which is also already in place by the YourEurope portal. So also not any additional work on your side. And then the fourth step is the search within the YourEurope portal. So here we would like to test and to see, once we have the additional metadata in place, whether the search is improved, and also based on maybe filters, etc., how we can further improve the search within the YourEurope portal. So this step will be also to be seen how to specifically tackle it, how to improve the search and test whether the search is improved.
And maybe a side remark on 2 and 3, it's correct that as Maxime said, you have already done this to a big extent for the repository of links. Of course, you have chosen different ways because there are different ways you can provide this information through a spreadsheet, through the crawler, or through a REST API. All those are fine. The question is, depending on if you want to test some other ways through this pilot, it's possible, and of course it will also require some additional work. So up to discussion with you, but depending on what you want to also prove or test, that's also something we can discuss on how to include it within the scope of the pilot.
Yeah, exactly. So there are multiple ways of providing the data, and based on the way, so as you see here, you have either without annotation of the web pages, which is then you provide it manually, or via an API or via an Excel. And then the gathering at the European level. So the third step is a bit different, where they simply need to process your upload. While in the second step, it is about annotating, which is also what some member states are doing, annotating the HTML pages, and then at European level, they harvest the data from then the pages you indicate. But in this pilot, we provide, well, we support both ways, and in case that, for example, currently you are providing the information manually, but you would like to experiment with the annotation of these texts and to see if it's also possible, we can also help on this part. That's also a goal of this pilot, to test the different ways possible. So I don't know if there are already any questions on the different steps or remarks, and do you agree with the steps that we have presented here?
Otherwise, we can move to Mural,
Yep.
and because this is also tackling this.
Exactly. So now we will move to Mural, a tool we have also used in the past. So I will put the link in the chat right here. And if you can all click on the link, and then we can go together to Mural. And I will wait a bit so that everybody is in Mural, and then I will summon everyone to the first exercise. So what we want to do now in Mural is to gather some input from you, how you're doing things now and your priorities. So in case there is an issue to connect, let us know in the chat. I see a lot of people already are connected. So what I will do is I will summon everyone to the first exercise. And what we want to do in the first exercise is to vote on the, so in the first exercise, you see different kind of statements, what the pilot should do. And what we want to do now is that you vote on the ones that have a priority for you. So what I will do is I will start a voting session. So exercise 1, and I will give every attendant 3 votes, and there are 6 options. And so the idea is that you click on one of the cards below, and then that gives 1 vote. And you can remove votes by using Shift and click. So I will give an example. If I want to vote on the first one indicated, I just do a double click, or a single click is also fine. I see. And you have 3 votes, so please indicate the 3 most important things for you.
And
so
let's also go through the propositions, Maxime.
Okay. Yeah.
They are aligned with what we have explained right before, but just to make sure we give a small explanation for each.
Okay, sure. So on the top, the first one is providing the additional data easily for the users. The second one is adding metadata text to improve the search results. Here with the focus on improving the search results and by giving more metadata and adding metadata on top of it. The third one is increasing the amount of services we have now described at the European level. That's also a possibility. The fourth one, showing additional data in the results. The fifth one is the filtering, so more filters within the YourEurope portal. That is important for you. And then the sixth one is increasing the automation of the provision of data.
If something is unclear, don't hesitate to raise it in the chat. Otherwise, you can also start to vote.
I don't see any votes coming in, but maybe I don't see it.
So difference between 1 and 6. They are related, but the sixth one is really looking into the automation part, while the first one is more in general. Do you have the information, the additional information that we discussed as part of the model? And so can the mapping be done easily? While the sixth is really based on the information you have, can we automate, for example, the tagging side? Can we automate the extraction and provision of the information, the metadata, to YourEurope, to the repository of links? So does this make it clear?
Guys, all we have to do is just click in
The post-it.
Okay, because Maxim said he sees no votes and
Yeah,
okay.
indeed, but I'm wondering whether they only appear after the voting session. If I end it.
I see 5 people are voting. Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
4 have voted and have 0 left.
Yeah, but I don't see the votes. So maybe they only show after the voting, I guess.
But also meaning that you and me, Maxim, we are not voting, of course.
No, okay,
That would be
but
a bit biasing.
I see 5 people have voted, so I think we can end here.
Yeah.
The voting session. Okay, so here you have the voting results.
Yeah. So in general, okay, I go ahead. In general, we see that first priority is, can I provide the information easily? So more related to the mapping aspect, compared to the model we are developing together now. And second top priority is, what about the filters and the classifications needed for those filters? How can they improve the search, the usability of the search? And then we have really about the metadata tags. How can we help to structure the information on the different HTML pages in order to improve the searchability, the search results? Okay, that sounds good. This is not a final vote. It's just an indication on our side, okay, on how to plan also the upcoming month.
Yeah, and where to put a bit more focus on.
Yeah.
Okay, but in that case, let's move on to the second exercise, and again I will summon you so that everybody is in the right spot. But I see people are already moving correctly. So summon. So the second exercise, what we have done here is we have listed all the countries attending, and based on the feedback we've got from Grow, we have already indicated in green the ways you are providing data for each country. So for example, for Estonia, this is via Excel. What we first want to ask is it correct what we have indicated? If you can validate that, or move the dots or remove dots where needed, you can simply grab a dot and then remove it to a different column, or put on or delete. So first of all, please validate whether the ways you are providing data is correct. For other, for example, we have Excel crawler manual, other can be the API. And if you want to add a dot, you can do control. You can copy it by right-clicking it, or Control-C, Control-V.
And please use the green dots for now. The red ones are for another question.
Okay, but I don't see a lot of dots moving, so I guess what we have initially put there is correct. So for the second question is, would you be interested in testing another method? And therefore you can pick a dot and put it for your country within a different option. For example, if you're currently doing Excel, but you would like to check how the crawler works, we can assist in this. And we can, for example, help you in annotation and the whole process. So in that case, feel free to take a dot and put it in a different column. But if there is no need, then
To take a dot, you need to press Control, Control, and then click on it.
And other could be what? APIs or? Because if it's just APIs, why don't we just write API there? I mean,
yeah, that's a valid point, Valentini. I can wait. I'll
just to be more clear.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah.
So for everyone other, we can change it to the API, so the web services, to be clear.
Besides, the Excel never worked for more than, I don't remember, 40, 50 records. For us, at least, the case in December was we tried initially with Excel and we ended up implementing an API behind, let's say, the Excel. So in the Excel file, we added with macros a button and it was an API actually working. Anyway, okay.
Okay, I see also Italy, the API, but I've directed it. So you have tested the API, Valentini, if I understand it correctly.
I think they created an API to fill in the spreadsheets that they can share with the repository of links.
We're totally in favor of crawler, and we've but back in December it was not ready. Crawler went live, let's say, around January, February, something like that. So I just said that Excel did not work with more than 40 records. So we just had to upload 40, 40, 40, and we just went for an API implementation. Anyway, okay.
Yes, I agree with Valentini. The problem is that the options do not work very well. So they are nice, but the work is faulty.
And so, Ana Rosa, in your case, you would also be interested in the API, but you say maybe there is a need for some extra work to make it.
Yes, my problem, or better said, the Spanish problem is that we have a lot of different procedure portals because of our federated structure. So we have authorities that prefer to use Excel or crawler, or manually is from my point of view, manually is necessary for changing things that it is easier to change by manually than by crawler or what. Yes, and also the API. I tried to use the API, the EDTX, I think they call it, but I was not able to do it. I'm pending to talk with Alice to solve it. But for instance, when the competent authority has a catalog of service in place, for them it is a good solution to use an API to synchronize with the repository of links.
Indeed. And yeah, that would remove the duplication of manual work. If you update your CMS or your catalog of services at national level, it means that you can also, or regional level, it means that you can directly feed and make the changes through the API at European level. Yep.
Yep.
And you mentioned that for you it was an issue to really implement the API or make
Yes,
use
I
of it.
couldn't. I couldn't.
Voilà. And
But perhaps because I have some lack of knowledge. I don't know. I couldn't.
I don't know either, huh? But my question was to the others: did you face similar issues? Because then we can maybe also coordinate to avoid anarosa that you discuss in bilateral meetings with Grow. It could be also good that we coordinate with the different member states if the issues are the same, and that we have a combined session or something like that. I think that would.
The problem with the crawler, for instance, we have two portals with the crawler option, the tax agency and the information portal, the general information portal. And according to Alexandru, the crawler has difficulties because of the variety of situations it can find. So we had to analyze point by point what was the problem and solve it, and it was like a hard work from both sides, from the group sides and from the Spanish side. So at the end, the crawler succeed, but not without a lot of effort.
Yeah.
And it still demands some manual steps from Alex as well. I mean, it's not a fully automated process yet, the crawler.
Oh, okay.
For sure, yeah, because for example, our repository, the crawler runs, how can I say, after his, after something he does. For example, he has said that every Wednesday the crawler runs for Greece. Okay, so my task is next day to get in the repository and just check if, because there has been anarosa for us also quite some time of debugging, because not many member states chose the crawler solution, let's say. So the first ones were actually the testing of the crawler in the production environment, though. So anyway, it requires some manual steps from their side also at the time being. I think something with a file, because for example, 1 month, our repository is supposed to be updated every Wednesday and was not. There were still links that were added in our national portal, but were not notified. So anyway, any technical issues can be resolved, of course. But that's why is this a concern for the pilot? I mean, it's a DG Grow, let's say, obligation. I mean, why are we worried about this?
It's not a word. It's more as part of the pilot, we might also, as a side objective, look into different ways of feeding the information at European level, and reuse the ones that exist, but also investigate in the ones. For example, if we dive into the metadata tags, this will be directly related to how the crawler works, and that's why we see, okay, who is also interested in this one. Yeah. But I think we can move to the next exercise. I think for now we covered the different
So I will summon you all to the third exercise, but I see people are already moving. So the third exercise, we have the question there is, the first question we have is your data structured? Is it according to a model? So a simple yes or no. You can create a new sticky note by just double clicking. So for example, if I go for Estonia, no, I will just simply do it and delete it. For example, for Estonia, I can put a simple yes and then like that. So double click and create a post-it, and you can put it within your country. And of course, you can put any comments on the right of it. And then the third question, you can do it simultaneously. In which format is your data currently available? So in case indeed, Anna Rosa, if it depends, you can put a comment on the right and indicate which information is structured, which one's not yet, etc.
How can I make this bigger?
You can simply select it normally, and then so you double click on it again. So you click on the. I'm doing it on the right.
You click on the screen, and then with the, for instance, with the wheel of the mouse, you will zoom in.
Do you mean
No. The zooming? So the note cannot be enlarged, but the zooming is what I have to use. Okay.
It will fit better if you don't enlarge it and just zoom in, and you will see much better. Yeah.
I'll pretend.
Data format, and with which format is your data available? What kind? Yeah.
I think it's a double question, Kat, about is, for example, your data managed through a CMS? If yes, what kind of CMS? And also, is it available in specific formats like machine readable formats, Turtle, JSON LD, RDF, or other formats?
I'm sorry, Florian, can you say that again? I'm not sure I understand the third column. If we follow a data, if we are aligned with a data model, no, it's another thing. The third column.
It's really about the format of the data, not in terms of structure, but more in terms of language used. Like, is it XML? Is it RDF? Is it JSON? Is it, yeah. I see, Ana Rosa, in your case, for example, it's directly in the database. I guess it's relational database.
Yes.
And Kirsi, in the case of Finland, you mentioned that there is no common data model used by all competent authorities, but are there different data models? I guess yes, right? But then they differ from one authority to another.
Yes, exactly. And in some cases we use these service catalog information. So that's sort of one data model, but each competent authority can choose how to use the information, which data model they use, etc. So
Yeah.
there is no consensus about that.
Yeah. And why are we, of course, asking such questions? Simply because we want to get a bit of a view on, okay, what is feasible, and to start the discussions with the people that are willing to participate in the pilots, to see what will be the exact scope for each of you. Yeah. Because as part of the pilot, we will prioritize first the service for which there is a model, for example. Do you need some extra time, or?
Yeah, I see on the road is still adding some content, so we'll wait.
Yeah.
I finished.
Okay. Okay, but I think then everyone has put their information. Should we run over them, Florian, or do we continue?
In a couple of minutes.
Yeah. So starting with Estonia, so the structured data, and then it's in CSV and probably other formats. Yes. Okay.
And maybe a small question. I think it was you who filled that in. For the CSV and the potential other formats for the future, this is purely for the SDG information, or it's in general for the public service descriptions in Estonia?
We're going to change our public services database, and then there is not exactly set out which way the formats we can use in the future. But I think that we can be, so we are at the stage of development at the moment, so we can choose more data formats.
Yep.
So that's the question. I cannot tell you exactly at the moment.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. But we can probably choose which kind of data formats will be relevant, and then just to implement those.
Yeah, so, indeed. And maybe as part of the pilot, we could also check whether certain formats would be more interesting for you to consider. Yeah. Depending on the timeline. Yeah. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Okay. Then we can move to Spain. We'll zoom in a bit. So the format, it depends either on the legacy systems or not. And smaller authorities don't use the data model. Okay. Then each competent authority has a different situation. Okay. Either a relational database, a CMS, manual editing, etc. So this is for the local for the different competent authorities, and the different structure used are the relational database, HTML, XML, and web services. Okay, that looks good. Then going over to Italy, no structured format is used yet, and this one, the work on a structured model is then included in the SDG implementation roadmap. Then moving over to Finland, as they mentioned, it's all by different competent authorities, so there is no common data model used. For Greece, they're partially, I guess, and then you'll have to comment, Valentini, for the different kind of formats, but indeed, we can tackle this also later, that's not an issue.
Good.
Okay, but thanks for all the input within the mural. That's always nice that everyone collaborates on this. But I think now we can move back to the slides and yeah, start with closing down the webinar shortly because we have 10 minutes left. So let me go back to the.
And are there any remaining questions before we wrap up?
Can I?
Sure, sure.
Okay. How are we gonna measure the improvement, let's say, in findability? Are we gonna use users? I mean, it's a thing, huh? I mean, how do you measure your performance?
I think it's a valid question, and it's not. There is no straight answer, Valentini.
Because this is
First,
not
yeah.
to be done by us. I mean, you have to have people not. I mean, someone being actually not involved in before in the whole SDGR thing. I mean, even the keywords, the actual words that you're gonna use to search something are different. The way we have been all this time familiar to use words that we have seen again and again and again in the annexes.
Indeed.
Is completely different. Even the terminology, how can I say, the terms that a user will use to search creating a business, starting a business, opening blah blah. It's like we need testers to search.
Indeed. So I think there is one initial aspect, which is by yourselves checking that extra or different results are displayed thanks to the adaptations we made. That's something that we can do, but really on the usability improvement, as you mentioned, we need first to check with Grow if they are capturing today all the keywords, logging all the keywords that are used by users. That's one aspect, and check whether through the additional metadata we match those keywords. I think that's something important. And then, as you mentioned, an option will be also to have some some testers without background knowledge of the SDG. And
the question also, Valentini, in Greece, have you carried out some kind of testing with a limited number of users? Have you done something along these lines?
No. I can contact for the Greek governmental central portal. Sorry, my colleagues, if they have something in mind or if they have already run a survey, let's say, for the findability, usability. Because all we have right now, I think it's feedback form available to the users, but I think we need something else here, more focused.
I tend to agree. I do agree,
and that's also an issue raised in the coordination meetings as well. I remember in around April, I think there was one meeting before Greek Easter. So yeah, I think end of April. Then someone asked that how are the YourEurope team is gonna measure now with the upgrade of the YourEurope portal, the addition of the search, the new country boxes, blah 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 blah. What's the impact, let's say, or you know, did it become more popular to the users? So this issue has been raised anyway.
Yeah,
okay,
indeed. And I think
let's see.
this
But
could help.
there's no meaning us testing it, I think.
Yeah, indeed. I think where you can help is indeed checking at national levels also whether you are capturing something or have conducted already some analysis of the usability. And we need to do the same at European level with the YourEurope team. And from there, this will be a basis to conduct some analysis of, okay, what are the kind of keywords used, what is the feedback received so far, etc. And then I think next to that, there is an option to really spend some efforts on testing, but again with testing from users that don't have background knowledge. Of course, the prior step is really to define the scope of the pilot for the different objectives we have presented and prioritized today, and check with you whether you agree with those objectives and in what would you be exactly interested in participating or to get involved in as part of the pilot. And from there, define with each of you the exact scope in terms of services to be covered, metadata to be covered as part of the pilot. And this, of course, will also be the services that will be later on tested, implemented and tested in the pilot. But that leads us to the timeline with the next steps. But yeah, indeed, before that, yeah, Maxime, do you want to give the overview of what we had in mind for each part?
Yeah. So in this slide, I prepared for each step the input requested required from the member states. So the first one would be purely performing the mapping. The second and the third would be actually what you're already doing now. So making sure the data is available for the YourEurope portal and collecting the data. And then, as we've discussed now, for the fourth step, it's really performing tests and to see whether what we have done, has it improved the search, and what are the parameters to check this. This is also something we need to investigate during the pilot, how to assess it. So this was a short overview, and you can always find it back after we share the slides so that it's clear for everyone. So going now to the timeline.
Yeah. So yeah, today we really identified the issues that can still be a part of the stable version of the model for the pilot. And next to that, we identified also a couple of issues where we agree there is a need for further coordination and analysis, mainly regarding the classifications and filters that were also identified as a priority. The next steps are really on our side to update slightly the model and to publish it again through GitHub. If you don't have looked at it on GitHub yet, please do. I don't know, Maxime, if you can share the link in the chat to the GitHub space. That would be useful. There is also an HTML representation of the specification, which from a human readability is also easier. And then what we will also do in the coming 10 days is to prepare a small scoping document for the pilots that we will share with all of you, and asking you to go through it and come back to us whether or not you want to participate formally. It's not formal, but whether you are really interested in participating in this pilot for the coming month, is just to have an idea also on our side on the number of participants we will get, and then the idea is to plan with you further discussions, probably in bilateral settings, to define further each scope, and start planning a proper timeline and approach for each of you. This is going to be more, the last part is going to be more during the summer, so that we, because voila, summer month is until September.
September included.
But yeah, that's exactly why we put summer month, because we know that depending on the country, this will differ. And so we will start in July with the countries that are, with the participants that are available, and continue throughout August and September. We will, of course, also take some holidays, the colleagues and I. So yeah, that's why it's the period for really starting the pilot, scoping the pilot, is quite extensive, simply to give us some time. Exactly, RCTSC. That in the north of Europe, usually July.
October is too late, Valentini. But we can start discussing with you in September the scope.
No,
yeah,
I'm kidding, guys. Okay, sorry.
And then, as from the moment the scope is defined, we can start progressively with each of you kind of separately, but also we will probably prepare some touch points with the different participants to also share lessons learned, or share some
What would be good,
yeah,
if by the end of the month, indeed, after sharing this scoping proposal, you can confirm your interest and more or less what would be the best time for you to work in the pilot with us.
Yeah, indeed, valid point. And that's
also in the scope, in the piloting scope, we will also try to see how we can work at the two levels, because I totally agree with you, Valentini. What we have to do here needs to bring added value to the end users. Otherwise, it's a very theoretical exercise. So to look at the testing on the technical side, but also, let's say, the user's acceptance, to see how what we are doing improves the quality of the search and the results to knowledgeable users. So we need to see how we can involve some entities, some potential group of users to give us feedback. So I think we will have to look into this for the scope of the pilot with different possibilities.
I think you should, in communication, SDG communication group, the first or second meeting already, they presented YourEurope survey usage popularity surveys. By age groups, by categories on YourEurope, blah, 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 blah. So I'm sure there's a serious job there done looking for how YourEurope is, appreciated or not appreciated by users. So maybe if there's an easy tool, survey, or I don't know, whatever to use, okay. When the time comes, we can also adapt this approach, let's say. I'm sure your colleagues will give feedback to you from YourEurope, I mean.
Sure, we will contact them.
But they ran surveys for sure. I mean, they presented to us some
of the results. Yeah. Okay. Good. Yeah, that's indeed a valid point. Thanks for sharing. That's something we will ask them. Yeah. Good. If there is no further question, I think we can close it here for today. Thank you very much for the participation. And yeah, if we don't directly talk to each other before the holidays. We wish you a great summer break, and we'll be in touch.
And just please don't forget us. Let's be in touch in the coming weeks, because what we do here at the end of the day is to bring added value to the project and to the regulation and to the end users. So thank you for your suggestions and all the contributions.
Okay.
Thank you all.
Okay, thank
Thank
you
you.
all.
Bye
Bye.
Thank
bye.
you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.